Good evening. Einstein, Colonel Sanders, Charles Dickens, and Walt Disney. What do these four iconic figures all have in common, besides their wickedly awesome facial hair? It's not just their success, but their different paths to success. Each one of these people had a high level of intelligence in their respective fields. So it's really what makes them different is what makes them so alike. So everyone in here has earned the knowledge they possess. You never needed a number to define you because you already had a sense of who you are and what you were passionate for. Whether it be math or science or entrepreneurship or writing or modeling. So with that said, standardized tests, the scores aren't an accurate representation of intelligence. Today I'll be explaining both what intelligence is and what a standardized test is. I'll explain both the limitations and strengths of a standardized test, and finally a new philosophy of learning and how to look at your standardized test. So, what is intelligence? In the dictionary, it's defined as the ability to acquire and apply knowledge. Notice how broad that definition is. Acquire and apply knowledge. How do you acquire it? What do you apply it to? How would you apply it? And really, what is knowledge? So Robert Sternberg, a professor of psychology at Oklahoma State University, created a more precise definition. He defined intelligence as, quote, the cognitive ability of an individual to learn from experience, to reason well, to remember important information, and to cope with the demands of daily living. So now the question is, can a simple test comprised of multiple choice questions, an essay question, and some short answer questions, does that really accommodate all the demands that define intelligence? Well, let's look at the definition of a standardized test. Wikipedia defines a standardized test as, quote, a test that is administered and scored in a consistent manner. A consistent manner. So if we were to compare the two definitions, the ability of an individual, this is the definition for intelligence, the ability of an individual to learn from experience. So each one of us is different in this room. Each one of us is our own individual. So to score a test the same exact way, in the same exact environment, in a consistent manner, it doesn't really coincide well. Because each one of us has different experiences. Each one of us reasons differently, and we each put information in levels of importance differently. So, really, what do all these definitions mean? Well, it means that standardized tests have their limitations. Things they can't measure or tell about a person, including one's intelligence. Bill Ayers, an American education theorist, bluntly describes the limitations of standardized tests as tests that, quote, can't measure initiative, creativity, imagination, conceptual thinking, curiosity, effort, irony, judgment, commitment, nuance, goodwill, ethical reflection, or a host of other valuable dispositions and attributes. Now, what Mr. Ayers also says about intelligence is what they can do. What standardized tests can do is, quote, they can measure and count isolated skills, specific facts and functions, content knowledge, the least interesting and least significant aspects of learning. So, what do these standardized tests do? They help measure a student's ability to memorize facts. They help his ability to regulate content onto a piece of paper, regurgitate things that he's learned from school onto a piece of paper that he probably won't ever use again. So, that brings me to my final point. The mission of a standardized test is to measure how much you know, without taking in any other factors like test anxiety or my own personal experiences and whatnot. And that in turn makes the test consistent because they can grade it all the same. So I'm here to say don't stress about these tests. I mean, don't get me wrong, you should always be looking to improve your educational qualities. You should always study, be dedicated. You should always be looking to better your education. Always be looking to learn from new experiences. Be disciplined, you know. Instead of thinking of a standardized test as a measurement of your intelligence, take a second and reflect about who you are. Don't let a bad score take away from your passion to learn. Create a strong sense of self-identity and use these tests as a learning experience to help you improve. You do that and you could be successful like one of these 4 people up here. So if there's nothing you should take away, or if there's something you should take away and remember from this speech, it's that standardized tests cannot and will not ever be able to define who you are and what you're capable of. Today I've defined both what intelligence is and what standardized tests are. I've explained the strengths and weaknesses of the standardized tests, and by doing this I hope you could take into consideration this new perspective I've given you. And hopefully you'll be aware of what a standardized test is actually measuring. Take time to reflect and continue on your unique path to success.